Hi guys, and welcome back to the Thelma Matilda Owls Foundation podcast. I first want to start this podcast with an apology. This podcast was supposed to be a monthly series for the past couple of years, and I really dropped the ball with creating episodes. I felt a bit overwhelmed over time, and I didn't really have the capacity and time to dedicate to making the podcast, researching the topics, and making sure that I was putting out quality episodes. And because of that, I took a bit of a step back with the episodes. But I'm dedicating time in 2025 to reviving the podcast because I do think it is a great free resource for Black women to use when they need a boost or they're trying to practice wellness. I myself listen to a couple of podcasts on Spotify, and I find that it's a really good time to unwind and mentally unwind as you're listening to other people talk about topics that you're interested in, or you either relate to, or you just find funny. So I really wanted to bring back the podcast. Because of that, because there's been such a big gap between these episodes, I feel like I might need to reintroduce myself. So to do that, I'm going to tell you a bit about myself. I am Rayan Alvarez Bryan. I am the CEO and founder of the Thelma Matilda Owls Foundation. The charity is named after my grandmother, who came here during the Windrush with her 7 children to give her children a better life and work to rebuild Britain. I am the product of immigration. I am the product of my grandparents immigrating to the UK, and I would not be here if not for her. So I wanted to create the charity to honour her legacy, her work, and her struggles. Thelma Matilda Owls Foundation, if you don't know as well, is a Black women's mental health charity, and we work to provide a range of different services to help support and protect and advocate for Black women during their mental health journeys. And if you want to access any of our resources or services, you can go on our website and everything will be on there for you to find. With that introduction now done, I can now go on to talk about the podcast and today's episode. So in the past iterations of this podcast had been heavily focused on topics to do with Black women's mental health. And while that will still be the core focus and premise of this podcast, I really do want to branch out to talk about more topics, and talk about topics that I think are relational to Black women's health, Black women's experiences, and I think are also thoughts that I think that some Black women may have. And because of that, kind of segueing into today's episode, which maybe people may be like, how is this relational? I want to talk about Bad Bunny's newest album that got released this month in January, DTMF. Now, I don't speak a lick of Spanish, so I'm not even going to attempt to butcher the name of the album, so we're going to use the abbreviation DTMF. But I definitely think listening to the album, listening to the discourse that is going around about the album in Bad Bunny's interviews and on TikTok, I thought that there was a lot of cross-relation to the diasporic identity, especially the Caribbean diasporic identity in the UK. And for me, when I was listening to the album and going and looking at the translations of each song and understanding the context and why he chose to craft each song the way it did, how it paid homage to his home of Puerto Rico and his culture, and it had salsa and it had dembo and it had all of these things that like a Puerto Rican person would listen to this and feel like at home, as if this album was culturally relevant to them. And first of all, I was captivated by that narrative. I was captivated by the fact that someone had created such an art form, a piece of art, a piece of music that was so authentically them, their culture, their country. I love that. I wish artists did more of that. I wish more Caribbean and Latin American artists did that, paid homage and did artworks that singly spoke to their culture and their country. But also within that, I felt as if a lot of narratives, a lot of the conversations that were singly in the album around resistance and the political edge of the album really had a wider call to the Caribbean. Now, this is not to take away from Puerto Rican people and their struggles against Americanization and American imperialism that is spreading across the island and is quite literally damaging the ecosystem and the culture of the island, because I completely hear that. But also I think that there is a cross Latin America, cross Caribbean narrative and story within that, and that I think that Bunny has really pointed to in his album, probably very unintentionally. But I first want to talk about the album cover. So the album cover is of two plastic white chairs in this greenery scene with the bananas behind it. And when I first saw this album cover, I saw it on TikTok and people talking about it and people being very confused by the cover and being like, well, what does this mean? And then hearing the album and people being like, oh, this is like him showing a piece of home, like the two chairs are two chairs that would be in a Puerto Rican person's back garden back home. It's home. I looked at the picture and I was like, this could damn well be Jamaica. That could have been my granddad's garden in Jamaica. I'm pretty sure we have variations of that chair in my granddad's garden. We have a banana tree in my granddad's garden. The lusciousness, the greenery, the chairs, something about that just felt very Caribbean to me. And I don't know if any other Caribbean islands felt the same, like any other person from another Caribbean island felt the same. But when I saw the picture, I was like, this is the Caribbean. This could be any island. And I connect to it. I just felt like an instant connection to that picture. I was like, I feel like we have family pictures of like cousins, nieces, nephews, like my mum, her siblings sitting in a plastic chair in my granddad's garden. Or like I could literally like see myself walking around the back of my granddad's garden, like looking at the vegetation, being out in the sun and feeling so relaxed and at home, because to me Jamaica is my home. Like when I go there, I feel like I'm at home. I don't have to second guess myself, my appearance, my blackness. None of that is at the forefront. It is home to me. I feel so comfortable when I'm there. And then the short film that accompanied the album, where you get to see like how green, luscious and beautiful the island of Puerto Rico was, just made me feel like amazed, happy, but also sad as the story was moving told. And you follow this old man going through his island and he's watching things change and watch things be different. And as he goes to the shop and he sees like all the like American people that have now landed and taken over and bought houses in Puerto Rico and like have basically displaced the native Puerto Rican people, and how like the cost of the food of over there is so much more expensive than it was back in the day. Again, a story that could literally be told in Jamaica. Jamaica quite literally is now going through mass gentrification, where these big private beachfront estates are being built and sold to Western investors who do not know anything about Jamaican culture. They're privatizing beaches. There is a current campaign going on in the courts about accessing the fight to access the beach for Jamaican people born and raised in Jamaica, because at the moment 0.6 or less than 1% of the beaches in Jamaica are accessible to the public. 0.6% of the beaches in Jamaica on the coastline are accessible to the public. That means the beaches are privately owned by developments and privately owned by hotels, and these hotels are not paying the Jamaican people a great and fair wage, so it's inaccessible, and the fishermen can't go and fish, and Jamaican people can't go and use the beaches to have fun and enjoy their island and their home. If we think about that, if we think about this being a narrative across the Caribbean, To me, it felt like I wanted to go and fight with the Puerto Rican people to be like to these American people, get off their fucking island. Get off their island. This is home to them. This is home to the diasporic Puerto Rican people. This is home to me. Jamaica is home to me. Jamaica is home to my diasporic identity as a Caribbean person, as my home. And if I go home, if I go to Jamaica, I'm not going there as a tourist. I'm going there pretty much as a national. Like, I don't go to a hotel. I go to where my family is from. I go and stay with my family. And that means I am not also able to access a beach because I'm not going there as a tourist. I'm not going to stay in a hotel. I am going there to live amongst the citizens. And with that means I have an experience of Jamaica like the citizens. So therefore, I have to fight for the rights of the citizens there, because my experience is not a tourist one when I go there. It is home to me. But I also just love the album in general, about the general conversations. I feel like it pays so much homage to the fun, the light of the Puerto Rican people. It's so fun, it's so bouncy. You want to dance, you want to sing, you want to love, you want to live life, you want to go out. And I feel like that is so resonant to the Caribbean experience. Like, if you're in the Caribbean and or if you've ever been in the Caribbean and you've gone outside of the tourist area, in the citizen area, and you've gone and walked the streets or done whatever, you often will hear music playing. You often will find a good party. You often hear people have a community experience over there, and it's so light and it's so fun, and it can be such an amazing experience. Because I think in the Western countries, the United States and parallel the UK where I live in London, we have a very individualistic culture where people are not very bothered by other people in the community, and we are very one person. Unless you're part of someone's nuclear family, unless you're someone's partner, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, a lot of people don't really tend to care about your safety, your well-being, whether you've got food in your house, whether you have eaten and drank. And in comparison to that, when I go back to Jamaica and I go back to where my grandparents lived, that is not the experience I have over there. It's very community driven. Someone will come to the gate and shout and be like, do you want me to go to the shop? I'm going to the shop. Do you need anything from the shop? They are bothered by their neighbours. When my granddad was sick, before he passed away, it was his neighbours that were there helping him and helping take care of my granddad, because they knew him. He and my grandmother were very involved in the community, and they were help fed community, and they helped look after people's kids as they were going to school or opening businesses. And that care and that love were reciprocated each moment, and it kind of has filtered down to our family as we come and go from the island, as we come and go to Jamaica. That love and that care is also extended to us because we are a product of our grandparents. That care and that community drivenness hasn't ended with just them. And I feel like that is something that's missing in the UK so much. There is so much that I don't know about my neighbours who live next to me, and I wouldn't know if they are struggling or not, and I wouldn't particularly ask them if they needed anything from the shop. But I don't think anyone in the UK lives like that. I think it's very rare to live in the UK where your neighbours are people you intimately know like that and give care to. And if there are neighbourhoods in the UK where people actually do function like that, then that is amazing. But I definitely think Bad Bunny captures that in his music, that shared joy, that shared pain, that shared fun of the island, and how much the island does thrive on fun. And I think for us as the island who has gone through colonization, again imperialism and neo-imperialism, of the current gentrification of Caribbean islands, I think one thing that really stands out to me is how fun and music to us is always a point of resistance. If we look at reggae and reggae culture in Jamaica, that's derived from Jamaica, we can see that those songs, Bob Marley songs, are songs of resistance. They're songs of challenging imperialism and talking about the injustices of the world. And I think Bad Bunny is doing the same for his people and his culture and his island. And I love the fact that, again, it's very shared for the Caribbean, or I think for racialized communities. Our music is often a form of resistance. Our joy, our dance, our movement is actions. It's political for us. It's not just stagnant. We don't make music in isolation. We make our music politically. And I love that he has also done that. And one of the things that I think, another thing that I think like really like resonates with me as I was watching the TikToks was the diasporic identity, the feeling of wanting for home. Every single Puerto Rican person that I scrolled past as I was liking the content about Bad Bunny, more and more videos from people from Puerto Rico that were living in America came up, and they all were like, I miss being home. I miss home. I miss home too. I think it's interesting how migration is often linked to cultural bereavement. And what I mean by that is migrant people are more likely to have mental health problems. There's research study that came out recently that highlights the fact that immigrants are more likely to suffer from anxiety and depression. But there's also research from the NIHR that is talking about cultural bereavement that immigrants go through, how we consistently, and I will say intergenerationally, bereave the place where we know that everything, there's a shared collective jointness of our experience. Over here we don't have it. And I think it's why we enjoy when we have moments when we can, i.e. like Black people enjoy sometimes going to Black events, because it's, for us, it's a moment of being like, this is me, this is my culture, this is where I actually don't feel like sad, I don't feel bereaved, I feel like this is joy. But for others, it is grief. We have grief reactions. And when we have music and songs and artists that kind of allow us to feel and work through those feelings, I find it completely interesting that we as immigrants across the diaspora are like, I long to be home. That to me says a lot about how difficult it is to be an immigrant, and a generational immigrant. So you might not be first gen, you might be second gen or third gen, but how that feeling is passed on as we see our images, as we look at home, as we see our music, as we hear our sounds, and we relate to our history. We know what's going on back home and the struggles of being at home, but we still miss it and we still want to be there because it is a sense of joy and lightness for us. I love that. But it also energizes me to think about more, how do we have cross-Caribbean action? Cross-Caribbean and cross-Latin America action. There is quite a lot that goes on. Obviously, we know that historically, Jamaica and Cuba have a long history. We know that Puerto Rico and Cuba are supposed to be sister countries. There's also linked histories between Jamaica and the Latin American countries, because if you think about it, like Jamaica, or you even know Jamaica was first colonized by the Spanish, and then the British overtook Jamaica, and if the British never came, everyone in Jamaica would be speaking Spanish. Everyone would be probably Latino and Afro-Latino in Jamaica. It would be an Afro-Latino island. So I definitely think there's like shared histories there, and I wonder and I think about, how do we have a cross-cultural, across immigration, across diasporic conversation about saving the Caribbean, saving our home, saving Latin America, saving the Caribbean? How do we have that conversation? Because this is not going to be separate fights. What Bad Bunny is doing, what Bad Bunny is talking about not wanting Puerto Rico to be like Hawaii, is exactly how I feel about Jamaica. I don't want Jamaica to be Hawaii. And I'm sure people in Guyana feel like they don't want Guyana to be like Hawaii. Barbados the same. We don't want to be like Hawaii. We want our cultures. We don't want Western American people to take advantage of the next natural disaster that might happen to our island and come and take the lands and displace our people any more than they are being displaced. But this fight is linked, and I feel like Bad Bunny is doing it in a way that I really can co-sign on. I saw today that he is doing a Las Vegas style residency in Puerto Rico, which means he's forcing people to come and engage with Puerto Rico. He's like, you like my music, you like my culture, you like what I stand for, you have to come here, see what's happening firsthand, engage with us, have conversations with us, listen to me in my space. I wish we had Jamaican artists that would do that. Obviously, Vybz Kartel had his comeback concert, I'm going to call it that, but the way that was marketed and advertised meant that Jamaican people couldn't afford it. Jamaican people couldn't go, and people from Canada and America were able to fly in and afford tickets. He didn't do what Bad Bunny did. Bad Bunny has literally got like Puerto Ricans only dates. Take a hint, Vybz Kartel, bro. Where were the Jamaican only dates? Where were the Jamaican only tickets? There were none. Would love to see more Jamaican artists do that. I think we have dancehall, we have reggae, and across the world they have like cultural, social capital that we can use as Jamaicans. I think Bad Bunny is like, I have the social capital. I can use this to my advantage. I rate it. I highly rate it. And Bad Bunny, Benito, if you would love to have a cross-cultural conversation around how we can collectively save the islands, you know where to find me, because I'm up for it. Let's do it. Let's fight to save our homes together. Anyway, I'm going to close off this episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments about what I said, about the fight to save the Jamaican beaches, I will leave a couple of links to the articles, the news articles about the court case that is being brought to the court around saving the Jamaican beaches and making them publicly owned. I think we should follow the footsteps of many of the islands of the Caribbean, like the Dominican Republic and Barbados, where the beaches are publicly owned, and the locals, people who live in the island, should go there. So you can click on the links and read more about that. I will also link to the research paper that I mentioned about migration, cultural bereavement and cultural identity. Reading that I thought was really, really interesting, because I definitely resonate, and I definitely think from even my own research project, my own PhD research, that cultural bereavement is a massive thing, especially in a country that continues to reject and other you. We are in a fight of our lives against far-right political movements and fascism, both in the UK and USA, and people in the USA are being mass deported, and people in the UK are being mass deported from Caribbean descent, African descent, Mexican descent in America, Puerto Rican descent, are being deported after committing to work and work hard for a country. The thanks we get for helping build their economy is basically a slap in the face. Anyway, besides that, I will link the paper and any of the things that I think are relevant to this. I will also link to Bad Bunny's album, because if you haven't already and you're like, I don't speak Spanish, I don't know what he's saying, I didn't know. I was listening to it and I was like, I don't understand, but Genius does have the the translated lyrics in English, so you can read the lyrics in English and understand. But also, listening to music in another language is a great way to learn. You can learn some Spanish, learn some sayings, learn some catchphrases, but also I don't think you need to always understand the lyrics of music to feel the heart, the passion and the message. And I definitely felt that, even though I didn't know what Bad Bunny was saying. It's also great. He has a lot of songs, all the songs you want to get up and dance to. You want to have fun, you want to mourn, you want to grieve, you want to cry. but you also want to fight, and you also feel the Puerto Rican pain. So I will link to Bad Bunny's album, and I'll link to some articles around what's happening currently in Puerto Rico. So thank you again for listening, and I hope you tune in to the next episode. Bye.